all hell has been breaking loose across the world, and Donald Trump has been missing in action. He really hasn't even surfaced since that disastrous State of the Union that he gave. He reeks of weakness, and world leaders see this. I mean, you take a look at what's happening in North Korea right now. Kim Jong-un announcing yesterday that North Korea has a prospective plan to strengthen its national nuclear force, and it's going to focus on projects to increase the number of nuclear weapons and expand nuclear operational means and space for use. So no comment in response by Donald Trump's State Department or Donald Trump's Department of Defense or anybody in Donald Trump's regime. Could you imagine if that happened, what I just said, during former President Biden or former President Obama's administration, how right-wing propaganda media would just say, oh my God, it's World War III. Look how weak you are. That's just another day in Donald Trump's weak America. In addition, we're now learning that China has flown large military drone operations at least 23 times since August over Taiwan, as it uses these drone operations to apparently rehearse a possible invasion. But again, no real comments from the State Department there, no real comments from Donald Trump or the Department of Defense. Utter and total weakness by the Trump regime. Also, yesterday, even though the Trump regime didn't address this in any material way, the Cuban embassy announced that a Florida-registered speedboat entered Cuban waters earlier yesterday morning and allegedly opened fire on Cuban border guards who approached it, injuring the commander of the Cuban vessel. Cuba says that 4 people on a U.S. boat were killed and 6 others aboard it were injured during the confrontation. And Cuba says that the individuals who opened fire against the Cuban Coast Guards were there to, quote, infiltrate the island and unleash terrorism. And they also claim that these 10 passengers had a history of being against the Cuban regime and that they were basically sent there from the United States, whether it was on direct orders or otherwise. And Cuba has detained the individuals on that boat who were not killed. You have Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, saying, I don't really know what's going on here. And you had J.D. Vance yesterday saying, I don't really know what's going on here. I mean, you would think that would be a pretty big international incident. I don't know, call me old school or old fashioned, but isn't that kind of a thing that a president of the United States would address? And can we just pause here for a moment at what I just covered in a very short period of time? Kim Jong-un announcing increasing their nuclear arsenal. Not do they have a nuclear arsenal, increasing it and increasing weapons production. China flying drones over Taiwan to rehearse for an invasion. Cuba killing 6 people or so on a fishing boat. 4 people were killed. 6 others aboard it were injured on a fishing boat. That's just all happened in a pretty short period of time. Also, the United States is apparently getting closer to invading Iran. The way it's being reported, though, is since there's no one else that wants to be an ally of the United States now other than Israel, what Trump wants is for Israel to strike first, then have Iran retaliate and attack Israel, and then the Trump regime goes in. That's like what their current thinking and plan is. Although Lindsey Graham is saying anything short of total regime change and total annihilation of the Ayatollah and everybody in Iran is unacceptable. And I just want to say this, though. Didn't this Trump regime promise the protesters in Iran, go out there, protest, we got your back? If Iran shoots a single protester, the U.S. is going in guns a-blazing and will make sure that nobody gets killed? Then I mean, there's different reporting on how many people were massacred by the Ayatollah. It could be as high as 30,000 to 40,000. On the low end, 5,000, 10,000. There's a media blackout there, so it's hard to know for sure. But here's what Lindsey Graham's posting. If media reports are true that there is a consideration of allowing Iran to have very small enrichment of uranium for face-saving purposes, screw that. This regime is made up of religious Nazis that are the largest state sponsor of terrorism. The regime has American blood on its hands, and they have killed over 30,000 of their citizens simply because they demand the end of their oppression. So you see Lindsey Graham is using the 30,000 30,000 number of the 30,000 massacre of people in Iran. Well, I think that's accurate. I think that's the number. But Donald Trump told the protesters to go out there. Donald Trump said, go out there, I got your back, then didn't have their back. Again, think about if Biden did that or Obama did that or George W. Bush did that. This would be outrage. I mean, right? This would be the impeachment, 25th Amendment, you name it. This would be outrageous. But our corporate news gives Donald Trump a pass, not here on the MeidasTouch network. Okay, now pause again. What are we talking about again that I just talked about in this episode? North Korea expanding its nuclear arsenal. Cuba killing 4 people, injuring 6 off a boat from the United States that they claim was there to attack or invade Cuba. Talked about the Chinese drones over Taiwan. And now we're talking about war with Iran. By the way, in the past, 24, 48 hours, it was the 4-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And in the United Nations, there was a resolution that said we need to have lasting, comprehensive, and just peace in Ukraine, and calling out Russia for its invasion. It was just a resolution to say we need peace in Ukraine, right? Do you think the United States supported that resolution? No. Well, Russia voted against it. The United States and China abstained. The United States cannot even clearly articulate that it wants peace in Ukraine, while Donald Trump and his regime are out there claiming that they're focused on a peace deal. No, they're not. They want to bleed Ukraine dry of its resources, and they want to help Putin in every way possible, as Putin has promised Donald Trump a $12 trillion economic deal when Russia's GDP is $2 trillion a year. But Donald Trump's a Putin bootlicker. He's got the photo of Putin right there in the West Wing above the photo of his grandchildren. That's who Donald Trump is. And so this is what's going on in the world already. And last night, more ballistic missiles, Shahid drones from Iran attacking Ukraine. More explosions in Kharkiv, in Kyiv, in Zaporizhia. By the way, if you also look at over the past 4 years, how many Russians were killed in its invasion of Ukraine, here's how Michael Weiss describes it. Our model suggests that Russian casualties are now between 1.1 million and 1.4 million, of whom 230,000 to 430,000 Russians are dead. That would mean 1 in 25 Russian men between the ages of 18 and 49 may have been killed or severely wounded since the start of Russia's invasion.
Most dress shirts make you choose, look polished, or feel comfortable. Mizzen & Main is the first shirt I've worn that actually does both, and does it without ironing, steaming, or dry cleaning. Mizzen & Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel great. Mizzen & Main actually invented the performance fabric dress shirt over 10 years ago, and since then they've perfected it with modern fabrics. Mizzen & Main shirts and pants look refined, yet they're stretchy, lightweight, moisture-wicking, wrinkle-resistant, and completely machine washable, no ironing or dry cleaning. When you put their clothes on, you'll feel the difference instantly. Professional style that's actually comfortable, whether you're in the office, on the road, or even on the golf course. And here's something really special. Mizzen & Main is a veteran-led organization committed to supporting those who've served. They offer a year-round military discount and proudly give back to veteran organizations. It's timeless style you can invest in once and enjoy for years. That's why thousands of guys swear by Mizzen & Main, and they want to look great without the hassle. Right now, Mizzen & Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com, promo code Meidas20. That's Mizzen, spelled M-I-Z-Z-E-N, and Main, M-A-I-N.com, promo code Meidas20 for 20% off. Mizzenandmain.com, promo code Meidas20. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen & Main stores in select states.
In the past 24 hours or so as well, in the United Nations, you had Russia's ambassador to the United Nations, Vasily Nebenzia, And he says, so you know that the Russians are not interested in peace, the Russian ambassador to the United Nations goes, I am Ukrainian. I am more Ukrainian than, and then he points to the Ukrainian ambassador to the United Nations. He goes, I'm more Ukrainian than Mariana Betsa. And then Mariana Betsa responds, how dare you? Just so you can see what's actually happening in the world. I know not a lot of people play clips of what's happening in the United Nations. We do that here on the MeidasTouch Network. First, I'm going to show you Russia's ambassador to the United Nations. It's translated, obviously, into English. Here, play this clip.
To speak formally, I'm a Ukrainian. And I have a strange last name. It's difficult to find it even in Ukraine. It is from the Zaporozhye Kazakhs. My father is a pure Ukrainian, was a pure Ukrainian, as was my mother from the Kazakhs, and from the Shiraz Panibets and the Panibennik.
And here's Ukraine's foreign affairs minister, also ambassador to the United Nations, Mariana Betsa. Here's her response to Russia's ambassador to the United Nations. Here, play this clip.
Если формально, я украинец. Мой отец щирый украинец, да и мать тоже. Пощирее, чем вы, пани Бетса.
Before I proceed to my statement, I would like to make also 3 remarks with regard to the statement of the Russian delegate. First, Mr. Nebenza, you're not Ukrainian and don't pretend to be. Second, we're never one nation with Russia. I will never be one nation with Russia. Ukraine is a democratic, free European country, while Russia is an aggressive state which wages aggression, terrorism, war crimes and crimes against humanity, and also genocide. And third, entire statement by Mr. Nebenza is a vivid example of manipulation, disinformation, and Russian propaganda.
Now, President Zelensky of Ukraine responded that he is grateful to each of the 107 countries that stood with Ukraine in defense of life at the United Nations, the United States not being one of them. The General Assembly adopted our resolution in support of lasting peace with clear calls for a full ceasefire and the return of our people. The United States cannot even support that resolution. These are the right and necessary steps, and we will keep working actively to achieve peace together with our partners. Now, you also are aware that Prime Minister Carney's been traveling the world. He's been meeting with world leaders, connecting the Trans-Pacific partnerships with the transatlantic partnerships. One of the way I've described it as, remember growing up when you would play connect the dots in like a coloring book? Basically, there's connecting the dots happening right now, and the dots are being connected in such a way that the United States is being cut out, and the rest of the world growing at a pace, economy, stock markets, bigger than the United States, right? Donald Trump and his regime want to brag about the Dow. The Dow is 50,000. But in reality, as the Financial Times discusses, wherever you look in financial markets, you see signs that global investors are going out of their way to avoid Donald Trump's America. U.S. stocks trail the rest of the world by the widest margins in decades. If you look at the performance, say, of the S&P 500, and you compare it to the markets of other countries, or if you look at the overall U.S. stock market versus the stock market of other countries, stock market returns under Donald Trump since his term began ranks 21 out of 23 developed markets. America's not number 1 or 2 or 5 or 7 or 12 or 15. Of 23 developed markets, the U.S. is 21 of 23. Yet Donald Trump is bragging about that as though that's the art of the deal. World stock markets are absolutely trouncing the United States. But I'll leave us with some signs of hope. And the signs of hope, you look at Hungary right now. Not the fact that it's currently being run by the Orban regime, a Putin bootlicker, a MAGA of Hungary, right, for the past 15 years. But if you look at the election that's coming up in April, you can see that the Taisa party is leading the Fidesz party. The Fidesz is Orban. The Taisa is a party run by Peter Magyar. And he actually used to be part of Orban's party and left and started a pro-democracy, or as part of this pro-democracy party. But in this new poll, there's a 55-35 lead for Peter Meiselas Thijsse over Orban's Fidesz, enough for a supermajority of the pro-democracy in parliament. The survey was conducted by MeidasTouch, widely seen as the country's most reliable pollster. That's big news. So in response, what is Orban doing? Well, now Viktor Orban is saying that Hungary is going to deploy troops and increase security around key energy facilities, because it's basically saying that Ukraine is threatening to invade Hungary. Hungary is now trying to Orban is trying to rile up the people of Hungary to act like Zelensky's going to invade them. As Jay in Kyiv says, now that he's imploding in the polls ahead of elections, Hungary's Russian-backed Orban regime tries to convince voters that Ukraine is about to invade. Is this how Orban plans to cancel elections? Right? That's the strategy right there. And you want to see right out of the MAGA playbook as well, Peter Meiselas, he's the guy who's the main opposition leader, the pro-democracy leader in Hungary. Here's what he says. He alleges that Orban's party, may as well call him MAGA, is illegally collecting personal data on prospective voters. Sound familiar? The data could be used by activists to knock on their doors and mobilize them on election day as Orban struggles to energize his base. Meiselas says Fidesz has begun committing election fraud. In one constituency, party members photocopied signature collection sheets and accidentally submitted the copies to the National Election Office. According to the regulations, retaining the personal data of signatories is prohibited. Donald Trump invading Fulton County and taking the signatures and taking the data, right? Does that sound familiar? In several constituencies, they are also conducting unlawful signature collection in hospitals, schools, and workplaces. Fidesz candidates are also using municipal and state resources for their campaigns in a prohibited manner. So, when I start off and say all hell is breaking loose, just to recap very quickly, you have Kim Jong-un, we're building our nuclear weapons. China flying massive military drones over Taiwan. Cuba shooting a boat that was heading towards it with 10 people on board, 4 killed, 6 injured. They're now detained, saying they came from the U.S., claiming that these were terrorists who were coming to terrorize Cuba is the allegation. War with Iran, we're very close right there. You've got Donald Trump and the United States abstaining from a vote to declare peace in Ukraine. You've got Viktor Orban claiming that Zelensky is going to invade. You've got the United Nations meeting that I described right there. That's what's happening in the world. I mean, don't you think, though, that the leader of the United States should be talking about this? Do you think our corporate news should be talking about any of this? Like, is this interesting to anybody? Hello? I mean, I'm not saying, look, some people covered Cuba, for example, but did you hear anyone talk about Kim Jong-un at all? Anyone talking about China flying drones over Taiwan? Anyone talk about any of this stuff? Anyway, hit subscribe. Let's get to 7 million subscribers. 7, not 6. We hit 6. 7 million subscribers.
Love this video? Support independent media and unlock exclusive content, ad-free videos, and custom emojis by becoming a paid member of our YouTube channel today. You can also gift memberships to others. Let's keep growing together.